Have you ever tried sushi? I don't know about you, but I used to be terrified of sushi. Just the thought of eating raw fish and seaweed, it just freaked me out. And so I would never try it. But then one day, I don't know if someone convinced me or I just decided to give it a shot. I did try sushi. And what I discovered was that I actually loved it. I thought it was delicious. And now whenever I get the chance, I make sure I get a side of sushi. I wonder in your life, what's something for you that you were afraid to do, you were afraid to eat, a place you were afraid to go, but when you finally decided to try that thing, it actually ended up being pretty enjoyable. Let us know in the comments, what did that look like in your life? For me, it was eating sushi. I don't know what it looked like for you, but I think we can all relate to this idea of having something in our world that we're a little bit afraid to do, but when we finally try it, we realize, hey, this wasn't so bad after all. If I can translate that to our faith, I think it's really similar to how many of us view evangelism. Evangelism can seem like a scary word, like a really intimidating word. Seems like something that's reserved for pastors or church leaders, but it's really not the case. Evangelism, simply put, is sharing the good news of Jesus. It's just sharing your faith. Really, it's telling other people that you love about someone that you love. But when I looked into this week, I discovered some research that I think is really interesting. Out of 10 followers of Jesus, out of 10 Christians, 9 Christians actually believe that evangelism is important. So let me show you this. Imagine this piece of paper. Each one of these squares represents a follower of Jesus. So out of these 10 followers of Jesus, 9 of them would say that evangelism is incredibly important, that someone should do it, that it matters a lot, that people hear about Jesus. Let me illustrate that. Out of 10 followers of Jesus, 9 would say that evangelism is incredibly important. But here's where it gets really interesting. Out of those same 10, how many do you believe actually participate in evangelism? 90% believe it's important, 9 out of 10. How many do you think actually choose on a regular basis to share their faith? Take a second and guess in your mind, and then let me show you. All right, here it is. It's crazy to think, but only 2 out of 10, 20% of Christians actually choose on a regular basis to share their faith. 90% say it's incredibly important, but only 20% actually choose to do something about it. Why is that? Why, if we believe evangelism is important, would we choose to not participate in it? Well, I'm sure you can relate to that, and really I can too. Some common reasons people don't share their faith are 1, fear, 2, that they just never tried it, and 3, because they've never been trained up on it. Maybe one of those is something you can relate with. Either you have some fear about what to say or saying the wrong thing or people judging you. Maybe you don't do it because you've never tried it. You've just never really given it a shot. Maybe you don't do it because you feel like you're not adequately trained. No matter what it is for you, you're not alone if evangelism seems like this scary, intimidating thing. But what I want you to see tonight is maybe it's a little bit like eating sushi, for me at least. Seemed really scary at the beginning, but once I tried it out, once I gave it a shot, I realized, hey, this isn't so bad after all. In fact, it's awesome. It's so special to be a part of. It's so enjoyable to do. I hope you end up at the same place tonight with this thing called evangelism. I want to take you to a passage in Scripture. It's 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. And Peter's talking, and he's encouraging people to share their faith. And here's what he says. Chapter 3, verse 15, he says, "But in your hearts, revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to anyone who asks for the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect." Peter, who's a follower of Jesus, is encouraging other Christians to always be ready to give an answer for the hope that we have. always be ready to tell others about the hope found in Jesus. I think right now, with what we're dealing with in the world, there's a lack of hope. There's a lot of people right now who are dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with stress, they're dealing with depression, they're dealing with loneliness, and they just don't know when this is going to be over. I'm sure you can empathize with some of those feelings, and I bet you know someone who's struggling with that as well. Peter makes it really clear here that Jesus equals hope. If you've got Jesus, you have hope. And we should always be ready to share about that hope. I think now is as great a time as any in history for you and I to get really good at this thing called evangelism. It's so important right now where people are hurting, they're lonely, they need hope for us to share about Jesus and the life change that happens when you enter into a relationship with him. So what I want to do in the rest of our time is just give you a pretty simple framework for how to share your faith. This isn't rocket science. It's not the only way to do it, but I think it's one of the most simple ways for you, even if you think evangelism's terrifying, I think this is totally possible for you to do in your life. It's just a simple idea. Share your story using these 3 steps. Number 1, share about your life before Christ. What was your life like before you got to know him? Number 2, share about how you met Christ. How did you start a relationship with him? And then number 3, share about your life after Christ. How did things change for the positive when you started a relationship with Jesus? What was your life like before Christ? How would you describe that? What was it like when you met Christ, when you started a relationship with him? Were you at church? Was it with your parents? Was it a friend? Was it a leader? Were you at a conference? How did you start a relationship with Jesus? And then finally, how has your life changed ever since you met him? What's your life been like after Christ? You know, this is an idea that's found in the Bible. I love the story. There's a man in John 9. Jesus cures him of his blindness. He was blind, and then all of a sudden he could see because Jesus performed a miracle. But when this happened, people began to question him about what happened. Who's this Jesus guy? What's up with all this? And I love what the guy said. Really simply, he just said, I don't know all the answers. All I know is this. I once was blind, but now I see. And Jesus is the one who did it. That was his story. Before Christ, I was blind. I met Christ today, and now I can see. So what's your story? What's your story of God's grace in your life? You don't have to have a dramatic story to have a powerful story. In fact, every story of life change is important. That's why I asked my friend Drew to share his story about how Jesus changed his life. Listen into this.
Before Christ, I didn't really have a purpose or a meaning for life. I kind of just went with the flow and did what was cool until in 5th grade, I went to Merge Camp, and that's where I committed my life to Christ. Not only was I forgiven of my sins, but it gave me a new purpose in life and the promise of heaven one day. And now I get to live my life with that hope and that promise.
See, while evangelism can seem like a really scary thing, it can start with you just sharing your story. Your story is your story. It's your life. It's not difficult for you to come up with. You don't have to write an elaborate sermon. You don't have to be an amazing public speaker. All you have to do is just tell someone about what Jesus has done in your life. So here's what I want to challenge you to do this week. First off, I want to challenge every person listening to this. If you're able to, I want you to post on your social media feed your story. If you're on Instagram, I want you to put it on your feed. Maybe you're going to post a picture of yourself and then just write out in the comment below your story. I want you to tag us in it, at Grace Students on Instagram, and we're going to be sharing these stories all week long. It's a little scary to do that, but I think it's powerful for you to go public with your faith on your social media feed for all of your friends to see. That's the first challenge for you, is to share your story before Christ, meeting Christ, and after Christ on your feed. Tag us so that we can share it, so that we can see it. But here's the second thing. I want you to actually use your story this week to invite someone to watch the Easter service online. You know, this Sunday we're going to celebrate Easter. It's going to look totally different because we're all going to be in our own homes. But that doesn't mean it's not still an amazing opportunity to invite someone to hear about Jesus. And so maybe this week you'd take me up on that challenge. You'd call a friend, you'd FaceTime a friend, and you'd say, hey, I want to encourage you to watch this service with Grace Church Woo online, because I believe if you got to know Jesus, he would change your life. Here's how he changed mine. Man, that'd be so powerful if you chose to do that. Evangelism seems like a big, scary thing, but really, it's just like anything else maybe you haven't tried before. Once you choose to participate in Jesus' mission to seek and save the lost, you're going to find it to be so fulfilling, so powerful. Man, it's going to put like wind in your sails. It's going to energize you once you begin to share your story with other people. So I challenge you to do that this week. Post your story and then share your story with someone else over the phone, over FaceTime, through texting. Let someone else know how Jesus changed your life. I hope you enjoyed this message. And as you head into e-groups, I would invite you to, even in that space with other people you know, to practice with each other how to share your story. That's going to help you get better at it so you can be more effective when you're talking to your friends who need Jesus. Have a great rest of your night.